This didn't surface in tabloids. It surfaced after a divorce. As Jessica Mulroney's marriage collapses, accusations tied to Meghan Markle's Toronto years are resurfacing quietly but dangerously. Claims of betrayal, boundaries crossed, and a silence that may finally be breaking. And if it does, the fallout won't be private. Before we get into that, please ensure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss any new updates. Venus Williams' wedding was never going to be normal. That was established the second she decided to do it twice, once in Italy, once in Florida, because when you've spent your entire life redefining timelines, you don't suddenly start following one. The Italian ceremony was cinematic, soaked in romance and old-world restraint. It was Venus as the world sees her. Elegant, composed, intentional, like every step was choreographed by fate itself. But the Florida ceremony? That was where the truth lived. Smaller, quieter, 10 to 12 people, no spectacle, no performance, just history sitting in folding chairs pretending not to cry. And sitting right there, of course, was Serena Williams, not the GOAT, not the brand, not the meme machine or the headline magnet, just Serena, the younger sister who has shared every version of Venus's life. The hungry years, the brutal years, the years where winning felt like survival and losing felt like public execution. This wasn't just a wedding guest, this was a witness to the entire archive. So when it came time for Serena's gift, the room expected something symbolic, maybe jewelry, maybe a speech, maybe something safe. What they got instead was something devastatingly intimate, a gift that didn't celebrate Venus the bride, it honored Venus the before, the version that existed long before gowns, before vows, before the world ever learned how to pronounce Williams with reverence. Because Serena didn't give her sister something new, she gave her something old, something preserved, something that quietly said, "I remember who you were when no one was watching, and I carried her with me all these years." The moment didn't explode, it collapsed inward. The kind of silence that only happens when everyone realizes they're standing inside someone else's sacred memory. Venus didn't sob, she didn't perform gratitude. She did what Venus always does. She absorbed it, like she was bracing against a wave she'd felt 1,000 times before. This wasn't about marriage, it was about acknowledgement, about saying, without speeches or dramatics, "You survived, we survived, and now you're allowed to rest." And that's why it hurt. Because the most painful gifts aren't the ones that remind you of love, they're the ones that remind you how much you endured to get it. To understand why Serena's gift landed like a gut punch wrapped in velvet, you have to understand the Williams sisters' emotional economy. These two were never raised on softness. Their bond was forged in parking lots, public courts, and a kind of relentless expectation that would have broken most families by the time puberty hit. Love in that house was discipline, support looked like pressure, and praise came after survival. Venus was first, always first. First into the spotlight, first into the pressure cooker, first to carry the weight of being the future before the world even decided if it wanted to accept her. And Serena knew that. Serena watched it. Serena absorbed it. And for years, the narrative painted Serena as the comet, the explosive one, while Venus became the pillar, steady, quiet, enduring. That dynamic doesn't disappear just because you grow up. It mutates, it softens in places, it scars in others. So when Serena chose her gift, it wasn't random sentimentality, it was intentional reckoning. She didn't celebrate Venus's success, the trophies already do that. She didn't congratulate her marriage, the vows covered that. Instead, she honored the invisible labor, the emotional mileage, the years Venus stood still so others could move forward. And here's the part no one likes to say out loud. Serena's gift also carried an apology without words, not for winning, not for eclipsing, but for going forward while Venus stayed behind holding the line, for becoming the headline while Venus became the foundation. That's not guilt, it's awareness, and awareness is heavy. The guests didn't know all of that, but they felt it, because when sisters speak in subtext, the room vibrates. This wasn't nostalgia, it was reconciliation with time itself. Serena wasn't saying goodbye to Venus the sister, she was saying goodbye to Venus the fighter, who never got to choose rest until now. That's why the gift was heartbreaking, because it marked an ending disguised as a celebration, a chapter quietly closing, a permission slip being handed over. And Venus? Venus accepted it the way she accepts everything, with grace sharpened by history. No theatrics, no collapse, just a nod that said, "I see you too." The internet predictably tried to romanticize the moment. Clips circulated, headlines softened it. Beautiful sisterly gesture, emotional tribute, safe words, comfortable words. But anyone who's ever lived inside a lifelong sibling bond knows better. That moment wasn't just love, it was release. Venus Williams has spent decades being strong in public so she could be private in pain. Her entire life has been defined by endurance, physical, emotional, cultural, illness, injuries, being overlooked while being essential, being respected without being centered. And yet she never demanded acknowledgement, she just kept showing up. Serena's gift forced acknowledgement into the room. It said, "This wedding isn't just about who you're becoming, it's about who you were forced to be." And that's a dangerous thing to confront on a day designed to look forward, because weddings are supposed to be beginnings. Serena turned this one into a reckoning with the past, not to haunt it, but to finally put it down. That's why the moment lingered. That's why people cried without fully knowing why. Because they weren't watching a gift exchange, they were watching two women quietly renegotiate a lifetime of shared gravity. Venus marrying Andrea wasn't the emotional climax of that day. Serena honoring Venus's survival was. And maybe that's the most Williams thing of all, that the loudest love in the room didn't come from romance, but from a sister who has walked every mile beside you, sometimes behind you, sometimes past you, but always with you. Unforgettable doesn't mean flashy. Sometimes it just means honest enough to hurt. And that gift, that wasn't heartbreak. That was closure. What made the moment unbearable wasn't just the gift, it was the timing. Venus was standing at the edge of a new life while being gently, devastatingly reminded of the old one. That's a dangerous emotional intersection, because Venus Williams has spent her entire existence walking forward while carrying everyone else with her. Family, legacy, expectation, representation, the sport itself. And now, here she was, finally allowed to step into something that belonged only to her. Love without performance, partnership without sacrifice. And Serena reached back through time and said, "Before you go, take this." The gift didn't ask Venus to remember pain. It reminded her that the pain had already been remembered for her, held, archived, protected by the one person who saw every version of her before the world flattened her into a symbol. Serena didn't just show up as a sister that day, she showed up as a witness. And witnesses change stories. They validate the things history skips over. Because Venus has always been framed as the calm one, the graceful one, the one who didn't rage, didn't spiral, didn't break publicly. But calm is often just survival that learned how to stay quiet. Serena knows that. Serena grew up watching Venus swallow things she never should have had to. So this wasn't about sentiment, it was about truth. And in that truth lived something sharp. Serena's own evolution. The younger sister who once chased Venus's shadow is now the one standing still, holding space, not competing, not conquering, just honoring. That role reversal is subtle, but it's seismic, because for the first time, Serena wasn't the comet blazing forward. She was the anchor, making sure nothing was lost behind them. That's why the room felt heavy. You don't witness history being released every day. There's a reason fans described the gift as heartbreaking instead of beautiful. Beauty implies ease. This wasn't easy. It was earned. It carried decades of unspoken conversations, sideline glances, locker room silences, and the strange grief of growing up too fast under fluorescent stadium lights. It was the acknowledgement that Venus never had the luxury of being just a bride. She had to be a blueprint first. And now that blueprint was being folded up, carefully, lovingly, and set aside. Serena's gesture didn't center herself. That's the most important part. It wasn't a reminder of rivalry or dominance or shared fame. It was an act of disappearance, Serena stepping out of the frame so Venus could finally occupy it alone. That's not something icons do easily. That's something sisters do when they understand timing. Venus didn't need validation. She's conquered worlds. But she did need recognition, not from the crowd, not from history books, but from the one person who could say, "I know what it cost you." That recognition hit harder than any applause ever could. And let's be honest, this moment quietly dismantled a myth. The myth that Venus was always fine, always composed, always untouched by the chaos that consumed others. Serena's gift said otherwise. It said Venus paid in silence, and silence accumulates interest. Marriage, in that moment, became more than romance. It became transition, a line drawn between who Venus had to be and who she finally gets to choose. Serena didn't celebrate the future. She secured the past so it wouldn't follow her into it. That's not heartbreak, that's mercy. So when people say Serena Williams made the wedding unforgettable, they're underselling it. She made it irreversible. She transformed a milestone into a turning point. After that gift, Venus couldn't just walk forward as if nothing had happened. Something had been acknowledged, and once truth is acknowledged, it can't be unlearned. The sisters didn't hug dramatically. There was no viral sobbing, because Williams women don't perform closure, they embody it. Venus accepted the gift with the same quiet dignity she's carried her entire life, and in doing so, she closed a door without slamming it. This wasn't about sadness, it was about completion. Venus Williams doesn't enter marriage as someone chasing fulfillment. She enters it as someone who has already survived fulfillment's absence. And Serena's role in that moment wasn't to lead or follow, it was to bear witness to the handoff, from endurance to ease, from legacy to life. That's why the gift felt heavy, because it carried permission, permission to rest, permission to soften, permission to be loved without earning it. And for a woman who spent decades proving she deserved space, that might be the most radical gift of all. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a quiet revolution between sisters. Serena didn't steal the spotlight, she sealed the story. And Venus, she finally stepped into her next chapter unburdened. If that didn't hit you, you weren't really watching.